Hi, I'm John Hornick. Welcome to lesson 29 of Chef's Apprentice, Learning to Cook Like a Pro, one small plate at a time. This lesson is oyster corn pudding. Cooked oysters and corn are a great combo, and they work well in a pudding. In this preparation, you will start to work with eggs, which are a basic building block of Western cuisine. Today, you will use them to make a savory, meaning not sweet, pudding or custard. Techniques today are chopping, shredding cheese, cooking bacon, seasoning, sweating, whisking, working with eggs, working with oysters, dusting with breadcrumbs, baking, making a savory pudding, adjusting seasoning, and garnishing. So let's start cooking. Hi, let's talk about the mise en place for lesson 29, oyster corn pudding. Now, of course, we're going to need oysters. Now, these are freshly chucked oysters. We'll need about a pint of them. That includes the liquor or the liquid that will come with them. I had these freshly shucked today at Whole Foods, but you may find them in a hermetically sealed container at your grocery store. If you can't, that have been freshly shucked. If you can't find that, you can also find them in a can, and this is usually in the department where they also have like canned clams and clam juice. This is the Crown Prince brand, but there are probably others out there. You'll also need to have about 2 cups of corn kernels. These were frozen and thawed. We'll need to have about 1/4 of a cup of finely chopped or minced onions, about 1/4 of a cup of minced red bell pepper, about 1/4 of a cup of minced green pepper. We'll need to have about 1/2 of a cup of the oyster liquid or liquor that comes with the freshly shucked oysters or the ones that come in a sealed container. We'll also need to have 2 strips of bacon that have been cooked, but not too crispy, just cooked. And then they've been blotted and drained, and then coarsely chopped. 2 strips of bacon. We'll also need the bacon fat that you use to cook that bacon. That'll be about 1 to 2 tablespoons after you've cooked the bacon. That's in this pan. This is the same pan that I cooked the bacon in. That's what I'm going to use to sweat the onions and the peppers. So we'll build flavor by using that. We'll be using that bacon fat that was rendered from the bacon. We'll use that to sweat the vegetables. We'll also need to have 2 large eggs. We will need to have 1½ cups of heavy cream, and although we don't normally have to measure things precisely, you know, it's about 1/4 of a cup of onions, about 1/4 of a cup of the peppers. When we're baking things, we're making a custard, it's important to be a bit more precise. So 2 eggs, 1½ cups of heavy cream. Also need to have about 2 to 3 tablespoons of shredded Gruyere cheese, about 3 tablespoons of melted butter. This was melted a little while ago. It's solidifying at room temperature. I'll have to melt it again a little bit later. We'll need to have about 1 cup of panko breadcrumbs. This is the 365 Whole Foods brand of panko. We may not use all of these, but we'll need about 1 cup to make sure we have enough. We need to have about 1 tablespoon of finely chopped chives. And we'll need to have some paprika, any brand. And we will need to have kosher salt, as we always do, and our Peppermill for freshly ground pepper. So that's all of the ingredients for lesson 29. I'll break now and come back and show you the equipment that we'll need. Let's talk about the equipment that we'll need for lesson 29. We'll need a chef's knife, cutting board. We'll also need a skillet. Now, this is the same skillet that I used to cook the bacon. We're going to use this same skillet to sweat the vegetables. It already has the bacon fat in it. We'll also need some brown paper so that when you cook the bacon, you can drain and blot the bacon on the brown paper. We need a grater to grate the Gruyere cheese. We will need a saucepan to melt the butter. Now, it's only 3 tablespoons of butter. You could just melt it in a little glass in the microwave. Also need to have a mixing bowl to mix up the egg mixture, and you'll need a whisk and also a wooden spoon. We also need to have a spoon, like a soup spoon, so that we can scoop the oysters into the serving bowls. We're also going to be serving in ramekins this time. So this is about a 3 or 4 inch ramekin. You'll need to have 6 of those based on the description. A brush so that you can brush the ramekins with butter. You can also use the wrapper from the butter to smooth it around inside the ramekin to get it thoroughly buttered. And then finally you'll need to have a toothpick or two so that when we place them down into the cooked custard, we can see if it's done. If they come out clean, it's done or close to done. Okay, that's all the equipment we'll need. We'll break now, we'll come back, and we'll start cooking. The first thing to do according to our prep list is to whisk the eggs, the oyster liquor, and the cream. So first we're going to take 2 eggs. Now the way I do this is I hold them in one hand, crack it on the surface, split it apart with my fingers here. Okay, now that takes some practice, so if you can't do that, just crack it on the surface and drop it into the pan. Now, as you may have noticed on that second egg, I got a little shell in there, so we want to make sure we don't have any shell. Second, we want to add in the oyster liquor. There's about a half a cup of that. Then we want to add in the cream. It's 1.5 cups. And then whisk that. Next step is to preheat the oven to 350 degrees. Okay, now we're going to butter the ramekins. Just take the brush, make sure you get all of the surface, inside surface of the ramekin buttered, including the rim. Don't touch the rim. Now that's much more important if you were making souffle, but my policy is after it's been buttered, don't touch the rim. Now with souffle, the reason is because it will, if you touch the rim, it can cause the souffle not to rise. We'll be doing souffle later on in the course, but it's just important at this point to learn, don't touch the rim after you've buttered it. Okay, now what we're going to do is dust the ramekins with breadcrumbs. To do that, we're going to put some breadcrumbs down inside the ramekin, and then we're going to carefully turn them so that the breadcrumbs get covered on the entire surface of the buttered ramekin. Okay? Any extra, just dump it out. Okay, next we're going to sweat the onions and the peppers. And remember, we're doing it in the skillet where we made the bacon. That's why the skillet doesn't look clean. It was just had bacon cooked in it. Still has the bacon fat. Now, sweating, remember, that means to sweat out the moisture that is in the vegetables. And you don't want them to brown, you just want them to get translucent. So we're going to stir them up so they get kind of coated with the bacon fat. Then we're going to just lightly season them with salt and pepper. And then we're going to let them sweat. Okay, here we are off heat. I've actually let this sit for a couple of minutes just so it can cool a little bit. We're going to now add in the corn and the oysters and just stir it around to mix. All right, next we're going to season. Now remember, we seasoned the onions and the peppers, so we don't want to over season, okay? Not too much salt. Little salt, little pepper. And stir it around. next we want to spoon the oyster mixture into the ramekins. Now I have them on a half sheet pan with a silpat mat so they don't slip around. You don't have to have that. You can put them in a baking pan. You can just put them on a cookie sheet, whatever. Now we're going to put this oyster corn mixture into the ramekins. Now we want to try to get about an even amount of oysters and corn in each one. Now I'm making 4 today. The description calls for 6, I think. This same amount could be distributed over over 6 instead of over 4. If you do that, you may have a little bit less in each one. You may use smaller ramekins, or you may have a little bit of corn left over. I think I'm actually going to have some corn mixture left over, but I've been careful to get all of the oysters out and use them up. Okay, now we're going to pour the egg mixture into the ramekins. We want to get up to about 3/8 of an inch below the rim. Basically, I want to cover all the corn. And again, because I am making 4, not 6, I have some leftover egg mixture. Okay, next we're going to garnish the oyster corn puddings. First, we're going to sprinkle them with some breadcrumbs. Next, we're going to garnish them with some Gruyere. Next, we're going to spoon over a little butter. And finally, we're going to sprinkle a little paprika. Next, we're going to put these into the oven for 20 minutes. 20 minutes, and then we're going to check them. Okay, it's been 20 minutes, and these babies look beautiful. You can see the bubbling. We're going to take a toothpick and put it in there, see if it comes out clean. Comes out clean, I would say they are done. So we're going to garnish them with a little bit of chopped chives, and they are finished. That's the conclusion of lesson 29, oyster corn pudding. Final photos of this dish can be seen at my Instagram, which is Chef's Apprentice, Cook Like a Pro. Next up is the lobster potini. Please remember to subscribe to my channel, and thanks for watching.